everyone! I've had a couple requests for a Procreate 101 course, and I'm going to give you that tutorial today. So we're going to hop into Procreate and just kind of run through the basics of what you need to know to get started. And then if you enjoy it and you think that you want to pursue Procreate a little bit more, I have other free tutorials in my goodies section and also on Skillshare. So, all right, let's get started. Okay, we're ready to get started with Procreate. This is my Procreate app right here. I'm going to tap once and it opens up to my home screen, which has all the artwork that I've already created in the program. And what you see here, these little groupings are called stacks. So if I open one of them up by just a single tap, you'll see all the artwork that I've created thus far that I've categorized in my tarot grouping. So you can name these whatever you'd like, and you would do so here by tapping right there at the bottom, and then you can rename with your keyboard. I'm going to hit done. But before I get too far into stacks, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a new file. So I'm going to hit the plus symbol over here on the right, just a quick tap. And what I see here are at the top, these are the default sizes. And then all these untitled canvases are my, all the sizes that I've opened up in the last, year, I'd say. So you can choose a size that you've already done, or you can create a new one by choosing new canvas up here at the top. There's a little rectangle with a plus that opens right up to your properties. So you have width, height, DPI, and maximum layers. So what I want to do is, right now everything's set to pixels. I'm going to switch it down here to inches. So you have the option of millimeters, centimeters, inches, and pixels. I'm going to choose inches, and I'm just going to tap on width, and I'm going to hit 10, and I'm going to tap on height, and I'm going to hit 14. That's my preferred size for most things. And you can see my DPI right now is set to 600, okay? But that allows me a maximum of 6 layers at this size. So for instance, if I want to take my DPI down to 300, you can see I now have 38 layers to work with. Okay, so you really have to think about what's going to work best for your artwork. Do you want to have a larger image size but a lower DPI? Do you want to have both a large file size or image size and then also a high DPI? And can you work with minimum layers? So I'm going to put this back to 600 because this will allow me to scale this up if I need to. So when I have my finished file, if I want to take it from 10 by 14 to 20 by 28, I'll be able to do that because it's 600 DPI. So then I'll have a 300 DPI file. Okay, does that make sense? But it just means that I'm going to have to be very careful with my layers. So I'm going to hit create. And my new file will always pop up in the top left corner and will open automatically. Okay, so now that we have our file open, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to start from the right side of our menu bar, and I'm going to explain everything as we go to the left. So the first thing you see here is a circle full of color. Okay, I'm going to change the color so you see it a little better to white. So this little circle is where you find your color palettes and your color options. So this is our disk view. We have the disk, we have history, which is basically the last colors that I've used, and then we have the default color palette. Now, I say it's default because if I come down here to the bottom and say palettes with just a tap, you can see that this peacock color palette has been chosen as the default. So I can switch to any of these, okay, and then it will show up on my disk view. It'll also show up on my classic view, same thing. It's just a different way to choose your colors. Harmony, you can see my peacock palette is still here. My history is still here. And then this is going to let you know colors that are complementary to one another. Okay, you can change the value of these. You can also change to split complementary, so it'll show you these 3 colors are going to work well together. analogous. So these are close on the color wheel. Triadic, tetradic. Okay, so you have a lot of options here. We can also go to value, and then you have a lot of control in getting the exact color that you need, right? Now, for the most part, I stick with my disc. It's just what I like to use. It's easy for me, and it's a lot like Photoshop, which I like, and Illustrator. So I stick with that for the most part. Okay, so I'm gonna tap that to get rid of it. And then next in line is our layers palette. So our layers, any file that we create comes in with a background layer in white, okay? And then a layer 1 just above that. So we can turn these on and off, so make them visible and invisible by checking off the check mark. So layer 1 is now invisible, background layer is now invisible, okay? So just put that check mark back on, and that means you can see it. So for instance, I can draw with my paintbrush on layer 1, okay? Now, if you want to change the background color, you do not have to create a new layer. You can just tap lightly on the background layer itself, and you can choose any color you would like for your background color, okay? So that's pretty easy, and I usually like to add another layer between background and layer 1 to add texture to my background. So to add another layer, you're just going to hit the plus symbol. And then if I want to move these around and change the order, I can hold and drag it right up above. Okay, now the background layer, of course, is going to stay on the bottom, but these you can just move around as you'd like. Okay, so now that we have that, I think probably the thing that I use the most is I tap, and you'll see these options that come up. Now, one of my favorites is Alpha Lock. I'm going to tap that once. And what that does is, if you can see it here, it's made the background on this layer completely what looks like invisible, right? So it has the little square grid behind it. And that means the only thing that's selected is this swirl or this scribble, okay? But now what I can do is I can come over here to my palette, and I can choose a different color. And I can take my paintbrush. We'll use a big soft brush for this. And then I can paint this in a completely different color very easily. I can also, let's see, I can also give it a texture. Okay, so Alpha Lock is really nice, especially if you're, doing any sort of shape that you've created and you want it to stay very neat and clean, but you want to create some interest within that shape. Alpha Lock is perfect for that. So now that I'm done, I can turn Alpha Lock off. And let's see what else we have in here. So we have an invert. Okay, you can see it's inverted that and made it dark. Now, I don't really like that, so I'm going to go back a step. So all I'm going to do to do that is tap 2 fingers. Oh, there we go. Okay, so 2-finger tap is a step back, but you can also hit the little back arrow right here at the top. That's back 1 step. And if I want to redo what I've just done, I can tap 3 fingers. Okay, so you can see that's gone forward. So I'm going to tap back again, and I can also do the forward without tapping the 3 fingers by just hitting this arrow. Okay, so back, forward, back, forward. All right, so I'm going to go back again because I don't like that dark color. All right, so that's all done. Now I can come over here to my eraser. Now, the nice thing about the eraser is that you have the same brush options that you have with the paintbrush. So for instance, when I work with certain paintbrushes, like if I'm using my soft pastel brush, let's make it large, and I want to paint something in, okay, we'll just do a weird abstract shape. Okay, if I want to paint something in with my paintbrush, but I realize, you know what, I want to shave off an edge, when I go to my eraser, I'm going to tap, so the eraser palette comes up. I'm going to choose that same soft pastel brush, okay? But now it's just going to be used as the eraser. Instead of putting color on, it's going to take color off. So I'm going to come over here to the left, and this is the size of my brush. You can see the size of the brush changing right there. And then this is the opacity, okay? So I'm going to leave the opacity up, make my brush size a little smaller, and then I'm just going to shave off some of that shape that I made. Now, the nice thing about using the same brush for the marker or for the paintbrush and the eraser is that you're going to get the same sort of edge. So if I zoom in, you can't tell that I erased that out. It looks as though I painted it on. Okay, so you'll get the same type of edge pixel, which is nice. Okay, so that's the eraser. Now we also have our smudge tool. So this is nice because you can go between, I'm going to scale that up a little. You can blend two colors together and create a nice gradation, actually very smoothly, which is really pretty. So the larger the brush, obviously, the nicer the blend. So you're going to have kind of a nice fuzzy cloudy effect. Okay, so that's the smudge tool. And then of course you have the paintbrush tool. If I tap once, I have my options. Now, in my paintbrush library, I have a lot of brushes that I've downloaded. So you have, let's see, you have sketching as a default, inking, drawing, painting, artistic, calligraphy, etc. But you can import brushes, and if you take a lot of Skillshare classes, for instance, in Procreate, a lot of the Skillshare classes will provide extra brushes for you, which is always fantastic. And you can buy whole packs. So I just recently purchased this watercolor pack, which is fantastic, and it comes up and is in its own little menu. But most of the time they'll come in down here on imported. Okay, so these are the last groupings of brushes that I purchased. All right, now you can also make your own brushes, but we're not going to get into that here. But I will show you that it's very easy to, for instance, let's take our monoline brush. I'll show you what that looks like. It's just a really nice pen tool, okay? But I can tap once, I can tap this, and I can go into the options for this brush. So for instance, you see how if I adjust the spacing, it's going to turn into dots. So we don't want to do that. Streamline will have your line flow a little more. I'm going to turn that back down to original. Jitter separates that out. Okay, so you can play with these if you want. Taper, if you want the taper to be a little stronger, you can adjust that here. And then size. So with some brushes, the size will affect it significantly. This one is kind of, it is what it is. All right, so these are the options here. You can play with these, and there are entire classes just on adjusting and creating brushes, okay? But that's all I'm gonna go into for now. So I'm gonna hit done. And now if we move to the left side of our screen, we have this little arrow. And what that arrow is our move tool. So if I have my colored layer here and I select the arrow, I can move this around my canvas. Now, one thing about Procreate that is different from Illustrator and Photoshop, if you, for instance, move your layer off the canvas, I'm going to move it, let's see, I'm going to squeeze, which I haven't shown you yet. If I drop this right here and I touch any other tool, it's going to deselect it. But now if I go back and move it, it's chopped that off. So anything that's going off the canvas is going to now be gone. Okay, so you just want to be careful of that. I've done a couple of moves where I've accidentally had just the tip of a flower off the canvas, and it just doesn't allow you to get that back unless you, of course, go back a few times. There you go. And with your back, your 2-finger tap, you can go back something like 143 moves. Okay, so you don't have to worry too much about that, which is nice. All right, so that was our arrow tool. Now we also have selection tool, which looks like a little ribbon. And we have options for that. So we can do an automatic selection, a freehand, a rectangle, and an ellipse. So these are pretty self-explanatory. I usually use the freehand. And so if I come in here and just draw a shape, okay, that is my selection. And I can do something like copy and paste. Okay, and if I go to my layers, you'll see that I now have just the heart, and the heart is selected at the moment. I don't know if you can see it, but you see these little lines going across the canvas outside of the heart. So if I come up to the arrow, I can move this heart around. Okay. If I want, I can duplicate the heart. So to do that, I'm going to drag 3 fingers down. Okay, and I have the option to cut, to copy, copy all, to duplicate, cut and paste, and paste. So I'm going to duplicate, and then I'm going to take the arrow again, and I'm going to move it. Okay, so now you have 2. Now, also down here at the bottom, I have the option to have snapping on. So magnetics is on right now. I'm going to also turn snapping. What this allows you to do is basically snap to center lines, right? You can see the horizontal orange line there, the vertical orange line. It helps you keep things in some sort of grid system, okay, which is nice. See, I can go straight up with that. All right, I can also choose to flip horizontal, flip vertical. I can rotate 45. Let's see, that's kind of fun. I can fit it to screen. So again, be careful with that edge. You want to make sure it stays on. Let's see what bilinear is. I don't think I've ever used that. I haven't. So we'll save that as a more advanced tool. And then we can reset. So we can go back to our original. All right. So that's pretty straightforward. And then up here on the top left, we have what looks like our magic wand tool. So I'm going to tap that once. And whatever layer we're on is what these options are going to affect. So I have hue, saturation, and brightness. So I can tap that once, and I can choose layer or pencil. If I choose layer, whatever I adjust is going to affect the whole layer. If I choose pencil, I can draw an area that I'm going to affect. Okay, so we're going to choose layer for this, and I can come down here to hue, and I can change the color of my heart because it's on its own layer right now. So it's only affecting the heart itself. Okay, so saturation and then value. Okay, so we've made that very light. If I come back to the magic wand, I can adjust color balance. Again, I'm going to choose layer, so I can add more blue to this. I can add more yellow. Whatever it is you want to adjust. Okay, I'm going to go back to my magic wand. You can do curves, which looks like this. So you can adjust the gamma, red, green, blue. I'm not going to mess with that right now. Let's see. Gradient map, Gaussian blur, motion blur, perspective blur, and so on. Okay. I used probably hue, saturation, and then Gaussian blur the most. So let's tap Gaussian blur. I'm going to hit layer. And now if I tap and drag to the right, you'll see the amount of blur that I'm adding to my heart. So if I stay to the left, it's going to blur less. So right now it's at, let's see, 10% about, or I can go up to 100. Okay, so wherever you feel you like the look, so we'll leave it about there. You just tap any of the other buttons. Okay, so now that's set. Let's see. Wrench. Let's go to the wrench. Now, The wrench has a lot of options. The first one that I'm going to show you is, I'm going to show you add first. Okay, so with add, you can insert a file into your canvas, you can insert a photo, you can take a photo, you can add text, cut, copy, paste, and also copy canvas. So copy canvas copies the entire canvas itself into one, I guess, JPEG that you can use in another file if you want to. Okay, cut and paste is only going to affect the layer that you're on. Now, if you want to insert a file, you're probably going to go to your downloads folder to get that. So if you're in a class, you download new brushes or a mood board or anything like that, it's probably going to come in as a file and you can pull that into Procreate. Now, insert a photo is a good one. So sometimes if you want to paint something in particular, but you need photo reference, but you don't want to see that in your file, what you can do is, instead of tapping insert photo, which will take you to your photos library or your iPhoto, you can drag left. Let's do that, drag left, and it'll say insert a private photo. So if I tap that, let me go to photos. Okay, so here's a photo here. Okay, so it's pulled this in to my file, but it will not be visible in my time lapse. So I haven't exactly explained the time lapse yet, so let's do that now. If I go back to my wrench and tap on video, you'll see that I have time lapse recording on. So blue means on. And what it means is from the very moment that I opened this file, it was time lapsing my process. So if we go to time lapse replay, you're going to see my entire process. Now, notice that you do not see that photo of the Gerber daisies. That's what you want. So if you're creating a time lapse for posting, for Instagram or Facebook, you don't want to see the photo reference hiding most of your image. You just want to see your image. So we're going to hit done. Another option with the video is to export the time-lapse video that you've created. So if I hit export, I can export it as the full length, right? Which could be, it could be 6 minutes, 7 minutes. It depends on how long I've been working on this canvas. Or you can condense it into 30 seconds. Now, 30 seconds is perfect for Instagram stories, for instance, or even an Instagram post. So most of the time I'll do the 30 seconds, or I'll export the full length and then I'll cut it down, or take a chunk of it to use for whatever I need it for. So we're gonna hit the X to cancel that. And let's see, now we are going to go to Canvas. All right, one of my favorite things in Procreate is the drawing guide. So I'm gonna tap drawing guide and turn it on. So now it's blue, and you can see that a grid has popped up. Okay, so I'm gonna say edit drawing guide. Now, what this does is it gives you the opportunity to edit your grid, for instance. So I can change the opacity of the grid itself, the thickness, the grid size, right? And this is great if you are doing text. So if you're someone like me who is fairly new to doing the text on your own, the grid is really helpful because it helps you keep everything aligned. Okay, now you can also do isometric. So if you are doing, I don't know, like some sort of really cool geometric pattern, this would help. Okay, there is perspective, which I have not used yet, but you also have symmetry, and symmetry is my favorite in Procreate. So basically what you see here is a vertical line, but I can go to options and I can change my symmetry tool to horizontal, to quadrant, so cutting that into 4, or radial. Okay, so what's great about this is, let's leave it on radial. I'm gonna hit done. Oh, actually, before we do that, I can change the color of my grid or my radial lines by tapping anywhere on this menu bar here, this little rainbow. So I'm going to keep it on the dark side so that I can see it. But for instance, if you're working on a black background, you're going to want to choose something a lot lighter. So it's nice that you have this option. Okay, so I'm going to hit done. I'm going to come up to my layers and I'm going to turn everything off, but I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm going to choose, let's choose white. And I'm going to choose my studio pen. And I'm going to zoom in. So what I want to do is, let's say I want to create like a mandala. Oop, one step we missed. Go back to your layers. And because when I chose Radial and Drawing Assist, I was on, I think, my flower layer. Let's see. Yep, so Drawing Assist is on. You see that? It has the check mark, okay? But I made this a new layer to do my new drawing. So I'm going to tap once, and I'm going to turn on Drawing Assist with one tap. Okay, so now you can see it says assisted. That's what we want. So now when I come in here and draw, you can see that what I do in one section happens in the next. So this is fantastic because if you are doing, for instance, a butterfly or a dragonfly or, you know, like I said, a mandala or something equally intricate, you can create it fairly quickly by using one of these symmetry tools. So it's really one of my favorite things because you can do something really cool within just a few minutes. Okay, so while we're at this, let me show you how to create a perfectly straight line or a perfectly curved curve. So the nice thing about Procreate when you draw is, if I want to draw a straight line, let's say like that, obviously it's not straight, but you can see if I just keep my pen down on the tablet, it has straightened it for me. So I'm going to go back. Let's do that again because it happens quickly, okay? So I'm going to draw a wiggly line, hold, and it snaps it into a perfect line. Now, if I keep my pen where it is, I can now drag that line anywhere on the screen. Okay, so I can take it to the corner if I want, just like that. And then if I want to create a series of curves, hold, it's gonna, let's see, there we go. You see how it snaps that into a nicer curve? There we go. Now the curves aren't as easy to keep uniform because it really depends on the shape of your initial curve. But you can, just like with the line, drag these and adjust the size. So I'm going to try and match the other side as best I can. It's not perfect, but I think you get the gist, right? So we just hold it an extra second and it pops into place. So very quickly I created this design with pretty much little effort, right? Okay, so that is the Drawing Assist tool. Now, if I want to turn it off, all I'm going to do is go back up here to my layer, tap once, and tap Drawing Assist, and now that check mark is gone. Okay, so it's no longer selected. And again, if I want to change the color, I can tap Alpha Lock, and I can go to, let's go to this dark brown. I'm going to choose a big brush, turn it all the way up in size and opacity, and I can color that in. Okay. So one other thing I can do is, this is now my, we'll call it filigree layer. I can tap and I can select. So I'm going to say select. What that's done is it has only selected the color on that layer. So if I come up here to my layers and I say plus, oh, you know what? I'm out of layers, so let's delete a couple. Okay, now I can say plus. And what I can do now is on this new layer, I can draw right inside that shape that is selected. Okay, so if I turn that off by tapping anywhere, okay, I now have 2 layers with that design. Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap the arrow, and to zoom in and out in Procreate, you do it with either a pinch or a spread of your fingers. Now, I always like to make sure I'm doing it on the outside of the canvas if something is selected, because if I do it inside, then I move the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to backspace. But now what I can do is anywhere where you have these little blue circles, you can move your layer. So I'm just going to tap. Okay, this is moving pixel by pixel down. Okay, if I come over here to this side, it's going to move at a diagonal. Can you see that? Okay, so that allows you to move things just slightly so that it's not a big jump like would happen if you were using your finger or your pen. Okay, now I do have snap-on, so that makes it easy to put things back where they were, but you still have a little bit of an adjustment here. So I'm going to tap up here, and I'm going to make sure those are lined up exactly again. Okay, perfect. So the only other thing with Procreate that you need to know is that whatever you have done in Procreate saves automatically. So I can just go back to gallery now. And sometimes it takes a second to go back. Oh, you gonna go? Let's tap it again. Okay, I can go back to gallery and you can see this is exactly how I left it. So it is saved, it's automatic. And the nice thing about this is if I come back 2 days later, I tap and I start working on this file again, that time lapse is continuing. So I don't have to go in and reset it or say start a new video. It is continuous. So if, for instance, let's say I come in now and let me see, is my drawing assist on? It is not. I'm going to turn that on. Let's say I come in now and do some extra design. Oh, that's lovely. Okay, that is in my time lapse. So I can come up here to my wrench, I can say video, I can say time lapse replay, and it's going to show me absolutely everything that we've done on this file. There it is. So this is actually just 4 seconds and a little bit. So that's all there and saved. You can export this to post on Instagram or Facebook or use it for wherever it is that you want. So I'm going to hit done there. Okay. And let me see if there's anything else I can think of. If you want to know how to make a palette, that is in my Skillshare class, and I will do another video for that because that one is important to know and it's nice to have a good option of palettes to work from. So we're going to do one more thing. We're going to head back to gallery. And we were talking about the stacks, right? So I'm going to name this, let's name it demo. Oh, demo, I'm going to hit enter. And again, so I can drag this on top, just like that. And now I have a new stack, which I can name demo tutorial, just like that. And now if, for instance, you have, let's say this is a single file, right? And I want to add this single file to this stack, I have to grab the entire stack and drag it on top of this file. I can't do it the other way around. Okay, so you always want to grab the stack and drag it on top of the newbie. And I think that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email. I'm happy to do another walkthrough or go over something in detail. All right, I hope that you enjoy Procreate as much as I do. It really has become one of my favorite apps to use. All right, we'll see you soon.